John Mozeliak said the quiet part out loud. The Cardinals are officially trying to trade Nolan Arenado. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. The MLB Winter Meetings down in Dallas are going on, and some interesting tidbits coming out from the Cardinals camp as John Mozeliak at the end of each day of the Winter Meetings will meet with reporters, usually in the suite of the hotel or something to that effect, and local writers, reporters get a chance to ask Mo about everything that had gone on that day. And based on all the reports coming out from Monday, reporters like John Denton, Jeff Jones, Derek Gould, I saw all of them tweet this out. John Mozeliak, when asked about trading Nolan Arenado, said, quote, "It's my intention to try." So that kind of reminds me of last year when John Mozeliak went on MLB Network and was asked about Tyler O'Neill and said they're looking to trade him. This is a little bit different because there has not been a trade demand. I can't recall if it was a demand made of Tyler O'Neill last year or if it was just the Cardinals had made the decision that they were going to move him. I don't really remember specifically. But in this case, John Mozeliak still being clear in all the coverage from the reporters down there in Dallas, stating that Arenado has not demanded a trade. However, for Mozeliak to take the step of saying it's his intention to try to trade Arenado, basically saying he wants to find him someplace to land. The quote I'm reading here from John Denton, "He's not demanding a trade or telling me that I have to do it, but in the best interests of both sides, I'd like to try and find him someplace," end quote. That's per John Denton of MLB.com. So we'll talk about the latest with Arenado. I'll give you the landing spots that Arenado could potentially go. Because it seems, even though I believe Jeff Jones reported that it doesn't sound like the winter meetings will be the time for this to be finalized, although even if it were, I don't think Mo would come out and say that because, again, you just want to be careful with your messaging here. But that in the next couple of weeks, 7 to 10 days perhaps, Jeff Jones said he thinks this could end up being done because the Cardinals, according to what Mo told reporters yesterday and everything that I've read, doesn't want this to drag out into January or beyond Christmas. So I think the next couple of weeks we'll have a resolution on this when it comes to Nolan Arenado is my expectation. Creating that sort of timeline does sort of add a little bit of intrigue and maybe even pressure to the situation as teams that are interested in him know that they may need to do their business or get off the pot. Like it's going to be something that maybe comes together. The Cardinals are going to get a feel for where the market is, how many teams are involved, who is interested in where Arenado would be willing to go. That's a big piece to this puzzle because of his no-trade clause. So we'll talk about all of that in this episode of B-Schaeff Daily, as well as a interesting tidbit on the Rule 5 draft that I want to get into. That part of the video is actually going to be posted separately on YouTube, but if you're listening on Spotify, you can just listen all the way through, and I will talk about that situation with the Rule 5 draft and something that came up on Monday pertaining to the Cardinals and what their plans could be after I get into the Arenado stuff. So again, 2 separate YouTube videos. Follow B-Schaeff Daily on Spotify if you just want to be able to sit back and listen to the whole thing at once. That's sort of the nature of the beast is we have different topics to talk about, so I don't want people on YouTube to see one topic and then not realize that there's something else in there too, so I try to break that up. But before we get into it, I would like to thank our presenting partners for our winter meetings coverage this week, Smith Agri-Service and Craft Revival LLC. I'll tell you now about Smith Agri-Service, a family-owned independent retailer providing farmers in Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa with competitive pricing on Corteva, BASF, generic brand crop protection products, and Brevant corn and soybean seed. Scan the QR code there on the YouTube screen or text 202-988-1106 or email smithag@irtc.net for more information. All right, so let's talk first about what actually was said by John Mozeliak when he met with reporters yesterday, and then I'll speculate on a couple of, or maybe even a few landing spots that I think could make sense or why they may not make sense, and we'll kind of go through some of the ones that I think are the most prominent. I'm reading this from the story by John Denton on MLB.com where the quote reads, quote, "It's my intention to try," Mozeliak said when pointedly asked if the franchise would seek to deal the 33-year-old third baseman they worked so hard to obtain from the Rockies before the 2021 season. More quotes here from Mo. Quote, "We both remain optimistic that both parties will remain happy somehow." Wow, that's a heck of a... We both remain optimistic that both parties will remain happy somehow. Okay, that feels like a phrasing that tells me Arenado's going to be traded. If he's trying to choose his words carefully. The quote continues, I guess the question this time was pertaining to whether or not Arenado could remain with the Cardinals. Mo said, quote, is a possibility, but I'm not sure that puts us where we want to be. From a financial standpoint of trying to move our payroll, there are certainly other ways to do that, but trading Arenado would be a big help. It's financial, but it also creates runway for someone else. So financial, meaning they're trying to lower the payroll. We've known this. We wondered to what extent are they trying to lower the payroll? Because Goldie, he walks. You let Keenan Middleton go. You let the pitchers Lance Lynn go, Kyle Gibson go. That's a lot of money already off the books, right? Andrew Kittredge has not been brought back. He's a free agent. So that's already a good chunk of money off the books. But when it came to kind of, to me, taking that next step from, it's just a little bit of a retool. We're going to do some internal options for some of these spots. It's going to be Palante. It's going to be McGreevy. You know, we're going to look at some guys in the bullpen to replace some of the veterans that we're not paying to come back. That's one thing. If you take the next step of we're trading away a centerpiece guy, right? Even the Goldie thing. Well, he's walking, right? He's a free agent. It's not that you're trying to get out from under anything with the contract. He's a free agent. And you've got Wilson Contreras under contract. You're going to play him at first so that you can get a better look at Ivan Herrera, Pedro Paez. Totally get it. The step to trade away a guy that was part of the team, though, with a big contract and is a centerpiece like Arenado, that veers you a little bit more toward rebuild territory than retool, in my opinion. Like, I understand that it's functionally going to be very similar, and Mo says there in the quote that it creates runway for someone else. That's talking about Donovan. That's talking about Gorman. That's talking about Sajacy, right? Runway for someone else. You got guys that could play some third. Whether that's Gorman plays third, Donnie second, whatever it looks like. Sajacy gets more opportunity. Maybe that trading Arenado is a way that you do find room for Sajacy on the major league bench because he can platoon with Gorman. You can move enough pieces around to find enough playing time for Sajacy. Or maybe he starts in AAA. Who knows? But the runway for someone else is a factor, per Mozeliak. Financial is the first thing he talked about, though. So that tells me it's more about a couple things. This Arenado situation is about finding a landing spot for Arenado, with Mozeliak saying, try to find him someplace. I'll find this quote for you guys. Here's another quote from Mo per John Denton. These decisions are not something we ever take lightly, but when you understand the profile of what this team looks like, and after meeting with him in Colorado, he's not demanding a trade or telling me that I have to do it, but in the best interest of both sides, I'd like to try and find him someplace. In this industry, change happens often. I understand change for some people can feel like anxiety, scary, and disruptive, but sometimes it can be for the better. It's just how you embrace and adjust. So they're trying to find him someplace. That's part of it, is let Arenado be happy. He doesn't want to be part of a retool, a rebuild, whatever this is being phrased as. He wants to win a ring. He's turning 33. Find him a place where he has a chance to do that. That's part of it. The financial aspect of it matches up with what the Cardinals are looking to do, which is have a lower payroll. But in order to get really good prospects or young players back in an Arenado trade, the Cardinals would be asked to eat money to pay down some of that contract for the team acquiring Arenado. The way I'm reading these tea leaves is that's not the Cardinals' motivation. Paying down the contract is not the motivation. They're trying to find Arenado a landing spot, and they're trying to spend less money. That's rebuildy, not retooly, in my opinion, but it is what it is. It's not different than what they told us at the press conference they were going to try to do. They had 3 big contracts, Contreras, Arenado, Sonny Gray. They said, we're going to talk to these guys, see where they're at. Wilson, based on everything that's been reported, wanted to stay, so much so that he was willing to switch to first base to do it, to be a Cardinal still. Sonny Gray, I think, from the way I read it, is he's chill. He's happy to be where he's at. He's getting paid. He's part of the team. I think he's comfortable. That's another thing, too, is you come into a new situation. Sonny Gray has been on a bunch of different teams. It seems as though he is comfortable with where he's at, how he's treated by the Cardinals, what everything lays out to be, and maybe doesn't want to upset that apple cart, right? So I don't know that he's just over the moon about staying a Cardinal. I don't know that he just said, I got to stay. I don't know how that went down. That he has no trade clause. Wilson has no trade clause. Both of them are content to stay at a minimum. Arenado is saying, you don't have to trade me. But, I understand what you guys are trying to do, and it seems like there could be a mutually beneficial deal here where I get a chance to win a ring, you guys get out from under the money, send me somewhere where I get to basically choose my landing spot because I have the no trade, and everybody can be happy. That's basically what Mozeliak said there at the beginning of the the quotes that I was reading from JD's story. So it seems as though this is going to happen. I'd be shocked at this point if it didn't. It's not identical to Tyler O'Neill last year, but when you come out and say publicly, this is what we're trying to do, it's hard to put that toothpaste back into the tube. I would think Mo says it's not like that. There's not ill will. Maybe he could come back. It's a possibility, but that wouldn't really meet the goals that we're looking for. He said, I'm not sure that puts us where we want to be. And then he started talking about finances. So to me, financially motivated, not a let's get some great prospects back for Arenado motivated. What's going to make it even tougher in terms of getting a quality return in terms of prospects or young talent is the fact that you're limited by the number of teams that are going to want him and the number of teams that Arenado is going to be willing to go to. Those have to match up. That's going to be a small list. It's been reported that the Cardinals are working with a small list. The list could be even smaller than that. It could be like 1 or 2 teams, maybe 3. I would be surprised if it's much larger than 3 unless there's a team that's not like a traditional big market money spender that is thinking outside the box and would probably have to pitch Arenado on why it's a good idea to accept a trade to them. So when you're dealing with that sort of situation, you don't really have the leverage as much. The Cardinals' leverage would be, yeah, we can keep him if we want to, but it seems like when you're coming out and saying, hey, we're trying to trade him, that probably you're not going to keep him, right? So I don't know. People wonder why Mo said that. Why does Mo say the quiet part out loud? Does it impact their leverage in a trade? I don't think saying it changes the realities of it because everybody behind the scenes that matters knows already. So I don't think that changes things much. And it's not like a situation where if he stays, Cardinals fans are going to be like, oh no, like we still have Arenado. Like it's not going to be a PR nightmare if he happens to stay, I don't think, because the only thing the Cardinals would be failing to do if he stays is save Bill DeWitt money. Right? Now, if you do keep him because you can't find a taker for the contract and what they're demanding of you, whether it's the Dodgers or the Yankees or whoever it is, I'll talk about the teams here in a minute. What those teams would basically be hamstringing you to do is, hey, you can keep him or you can pay down a lot of his contract because we don't want to pay that much of it. And then you can just give him to us, kind of like the Rockies did, right? Cardinals don't want to necessarily do what the Rockies did, where not only do you not get great talent in return, high-profile prospects, Cardinals didn't give up much. Gomber was a solid MLB arm at the time, but didn't really turn into a star or anything like that, and there was just not a lot else in that package. And the Rockies sent $50 million. So the Cardinals don't want to do that. It would be on a smaller scale anyway because the contract has just 3 years left on it, like $62-ish million, if I'm not mistaken, that would be owed, not counting what the Rockies are still paying down. So it's a smaller scale, but I still don't think the Cardinals want to just pay a guy to go away and not really get anything of substance in return. Granted, I think they're going to have to eat a little bit of the money, but their goal, more than it is to get guys back that are talented or high profile, their goal is to get rid of the money and then to get Arenado somewhere where he wants to be. So that's going to be disappointing, I think, to fans, but it's just the reality, and it's part of what's going to allow this team to move forward. As Mo says there at the end, it creates runway for someone else, so you're going to get to see easier lanes of opportunity for what do we actually have in Gorman? What do we actually have in Sajaci? Like, you might get that answer in the summer of 2025, Cardinals fans, and Cardinals organization is going to get that answer more so than they would have if Arenado had been here. Arenado will be traded. I'll tell you right now. Brace for it, prepare for it, mentally understand that it's coming. I would be shocked. I put it at 97% that he's moved. And that includes if the Cardinals, and look, this is where it gets not great for the Cardinals, but I think that includes if the Cardinals are basically strong-armed and it's just a couple teams that he'll go to and say one of the teams doesn't want to spend the level of money it would take. The other one doesn't really either, but they say, we'll pay half of his contract. And they end up getting him, on the cheap. Granted, the money's not that significant, especially for a team like the Dodgers when you talk about all the money that they've been spending. Arenado is 20-something mil, 15 mil. I think it's 62 total. And if the Cardinals eat 10 or 15 of that, you're talking about 3 years of Arenado for maybe $15 million a year on average annual value. A team like the Dodgers can be okay with that, I think. So I'm not saying the Cardinals are going to get completely reamed on this deal, but I just am trying to lay it out in such a way that people understand. I don't think elite prospects are necessarily coming back unless Mozeliak is sort of floating it out there like, yeah, we're trying to trade him, but then behind the scenes, he is willing to hold Arenado, more willing than he's letting on publicly, so that, I mean, this would be some real mind games, but if he said all what he said on Monday so that a team that's negotiating could hear it and then go, oh man, they're desperate. And then when the Cardinals don't act as desperate in the negotiating room, that team begins to panic a little bit and go, well, we really do want this player. Maybe we'll meet their ask. I don't know. That's galaxy brain stuff. That's just wild speculation as to the motivations of why Mo would have come out and said what he said on Monday. But it does sort of feel like he's going to be traded, and it does feel like the return is going to be less about, hey, Cardinals will pay down the whole contract if they can get some top prospects. It's going to be more about, let's get rid of some of the money and as much of the money as we can. And the names we get back, we're going to fight tooth and nail to get good ones back, but that's not maybe the primary motivator. So that's kind of where I am on it. Let's talk about the teams that could be a match for Arenado. I'll rank them in order of what I think, maybe not likelihood, but just what sort of makes sense to me. Number one would be Dodgers to me, because the money is never going to be a concern. And if the Cardinals have to fall back on, we're just trying to get rid of the money, I think the Dodgers will go, yeah, we'll take him in. We'll give you probably one of our more banged up pitching prospects that you can sell to your Cardinal fan base. Hey, there's upside to this guy, but he's maybe broken a little bit or hasn't materialized. Like, I don't know if you're getting a Bobby Miller. I think that even that kind of name, I think, would be a substantial win for the Cardinals if they can pull it off. And remember, Ryan Helsley is sort of kicking around in all of this as well, because what if the team that the Cardinals are deep in negotiations with, and it's where Arenado wants to go, so it's going to basically be trade him here or bust. What if that situation ends up where the team's like, look, we don't want to give you our Bobby Miller, even though he had an 8 ERA last year and he's gone through injuries and, you know, maybe he's not the guy. He's been somebody that was a touted prospect, a touted option prior to. And we still think he's got a really bright future, just 25 years old. So if that's the way that it ends up getting viewed, the Cardinals, maybe to get the name that they want, might have to say, well, you take Helsley too. And that could juice up the return. I don't know if that's something other teams would want. I don't know if that's something the Cardinals are willing to do, but it is something that I keep kicking around mentally of like, okay, that would be one way that you would get a better return while also still not having to pay a significant portion of Arenado's money that he's owed. So the Dodgers are an example that makes sense simply because, A, we know Arenado would want to go there. His Instagram has said as much. And we also know that money is, they'll figure out the money. Like, that's not a concern. So it's easy. That's why they're at the top of the list. Number two, I'm going to put the Padres at number two. And it's kind of like what we talked about a week or two ago when it was reported, I think by Katie Wu, that Arenado would be willing to play a different position, like first base, on another team. And I said at the time, the reason that stood out to me, that was reported, is look at the teams that have an incumbent third baseman, where if you're Arenado, you might like to play on that team, but you don't want to step on that guy's toes because that would be, you know, not a good look necessarily. To just say, I'm demanding a trade to the Padres, all this behind the scenes. Again, he's not demanding anything, but hey, I'd like to be traded to the Padres. But Manny Machado is sitting there as an incumbent third baseman where you're like, well, how does that work? You know, so even if it's not true, or even if it's not necessarily going to come to fruition, if you're Arenado and you it's out there that, hey, I'd play another position, I just want to be part of the team, part of the winning culture. That's a good PR thing to have happen, right? And then the Padres can go, oh, this guy's willing to be creative. Hey, we'd like to have this guy on our team. Mike Schilt is their manager, obviously. So you can kind of put those dots together and connect them and say the Padres would make a lot of sense. They're a team with a GM that thinks outside the box in AJ Preller and is willing to make moves and is willing to move money around and do things that he believes can help his organization win. So I think that would be an interesting fit. They've spent money. They'll take on money. Would Arenado, like what would happen there? Maybe you move Machado to shortstop. Maybe Arenado really does play first base, or maybe he splits time at third with Machado and they DH. I don't know. But I think that whole situation is, okay, is Manny Machado cool with it if we get Arenado, even if that means maybe something different for me? And Machado probably just has to have that conversation with somebody in the org and go, yeah, let's go, let's win. This guy's going to help us win. So like that may be a spot that I think could make a lot of sense because of the Padres' history with trades. They're willing to make them. Preller is willing to make moves. He's not afraid of anything and doing something bold. And again, a team that is built to contend and win. Although you're in that same division with the Dodgers, it does make your path a little more difficult. Figure you're always going to have to play a best 2 out of 3 series with a wild card series unless you somehow beat the Dodgers through the 162-game regular season. But hey, the Padres are still putting together good teams year in, year out. Sasaki is probably going to go there too. And I believe Sasaki is a Joel Wolf guy as well as Arenado in terms of their agency. So there's some more dots to be connected. So I actually think Arenado to the Padres would be very compelling. I think it would be way more compelling than the Dodgers because the Dodgers get everybody. Let's see the Padres beef up and add to their lineup. And again, when you talk about that Padres team, first of all, managed by Mike Schilt, so there's comfort, familiarity there, I would assume, with Arenado. And you also have the aspect of not only one star player on that team, right? So Arenado, West Coast, so it's not like a Yankees or a Philly where it's a little bit of a different media market. Arenado can just sort of blend in and go play. You've got Tatis, you've got Machado, you've got Bogarts, you've got Jackson Merrill on the come as a rising star. Like, there's plenty of guys in that lineup where Arenado doesn't have to be the de facto, he's the lead veteran, right? Here it was Goldie and Arenado, and I just don't know the last couple of years if that was the role that made the most sense for Arenado's personality. And so Padres are another fit for that reason. Yankees, interesting. I'll put Yankees third because I think they could be desperate enough to do something, and if they sell Arenado on why it would be a great fit, I could see it working. And they have other stars, right? Arenado is never going to be the guy that has to be the de facto veteran when you've got Aaron Judge and you've got these other guys that are out there. And I know their team's obviously moving around and changing, and Juan Soto's not going to be there. He was there, but now he's a Met. So things will change, but I think Arenado, there's enough out there. Stanton, Jazz Chisholm, Volpe on the rise. Like, there's enough. Dominguez is a young guy on the rise. Gleyber Torres. Like, there's enough names out there that, again, I think it's tougher to blend in when you're talking about media market of New York, and the pressure is going to be different in New York too. So whatever that means to anybody, remember, I'm not saying Arenado is afraid of the pressure or afraid of the competition. I don't think that's what I'm trying to get at. It's just a matter of there is going to be this notion of he gets to pick where he wants to go. So if it feels like a more comfortable thing to be West Coast where he's from, LA or San Diego make the most sense to me. And then after that, probably Yankees third, Phillies fourth. I like the idea of the Helsley Arenado package going to Philly, Alec Boehm coming to St. Louis. I still think that would be cool, but I just don't know if that's a fit, especially after the Phillies have been engaging in the free agent reliever market to kind of dice things up on that front. Let me take a moment to tell you about Craft Revival LLC. They specialize in passionately restoring log cabins to their former glory by studying traditional woodworking practices of the past and utilizing them in our modern world to create genuine, timeless beauty. Their focus is preserving these cherished values and existing structures, whether it be your log cabin or historic home, and elevating them to a higher standard. If you value craftsmanship, give Craft Revival LLC a call today at 573-366-6563, or you can visit them on Facebook or Instagram. They specialize in log cabin repairs, maintenance, porch remodeling, historic millwork, and they now offer new timber-framed construction, keeping craftsmanship alive one project at a time since 2021. Craft Revival LLC. We'll wrap things up here for part 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned for the second part of this video, which will talk about the Rule 5 draft coming up from a Cardinals perspective. And if you're listening to B-Schaeff Daily on Spotify, the podcast rolls on now.